The office windows stretched high and wide, soaking in the skyline of Chicago like a painting hung just for him. Carter Hale leaned against the glass with one hand in his pocket, his custom-tailored jacket still creased from a morning of meetings. His assistant had just left, her voice still echoing faintly in the room from her clipped update on Q1 projections, but Carter hadn't been listening. Not really. His eyes were locked on the city, but his mind was elsewhere, adrift in a restlessness that had begun weeks ago and settled deep in his chest like a weight he couldn't dislodge. He rubbed his thumb over the edge of his watch, an expensive thing he had bought himself after closing his first acquisition at 29. Back then, time had meant progress. Now it only measured distance from the version of himself he thought he'd be, from the life he used to imagine before it all changed with a phone call and a name he hadn't expected to hear again. "Mr. Hale," the receptionist's voice cracked through the intercom. "There's someone in the lobby. She says she doesn't have an appointment, but she asked me to tell you her name is Rowan Langley." The name hit him like cold water. He didn't move at first. His mind reeled through a dozen scenarios. A woman he hadn't seen in nearly 7 years. The woman who'd once lit up his early years in New York like fireflies over summer grass before she disappeared without warning, taking the kind of silence that never came with closure. Carter walked slowly to the intercom, pressing the button with measured calm. "Send her up." He had 23 floors to pull himself together. When the elevator doors opened, she was there. Smaller than he remembered, or maybe he was just taller now. Her hair was shorter, darker too, but her eyes were exactly the same. Wide-set, alert, almost too intense when they caught on his like she was trying to read through his ribs. "Rowan," he said. "Hi, Carter." Her voice was tentative, like someone unsure if she had the right to speak. He motioned for her to enter his office. The door clicked shut behind her, and the silence that fell between them was not comfortable. It was the kind that pulsed with everything unspoken. "I didn't expect to ever see you again," he said plainly. "I know." He didn't offer a seat, but she sat anyway. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. She was wearing a simple gray sweater and jeans, no makeup. She looked like she had come here with nothing to shield her. "I don't want to take much of your time," she began. "I know you're busy, I need to tell you something, about when I left." She paused, her breath caught in a knot she had to push past. He waited. He didn't rush her. If there was one thing he'd learned as a CEO, it was to let silence hang long enough for truth to arrive. "I didn't leave alone," she said finally. His brow furrowed. "I was pregnant when I left." Carter stared at her unblinking, the air in the room thinned. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then sat down slowly in the chair across from her. "You have a child?" he asked. "My child." She nodded. "Her name is Ava. She's 6. She looks just like you." The weight in his chest solidified. His mouth felt dry. "Why now?" he asked, his voice low, controlled. "Why tell me now?" "Because she's asking questions," Rowan said. "Because I couldn't keep lying. I told myself I was protecting her, but the truth is I was scared. You were so focused, so clear about your future. I didn't want to be the thing that made you choose between the life you wanted and the one you didn't plan for." Carter stood and walked to the window again, this time not seeing the city at all. 6 years, 6 birthdays, a first word, first steps, scraped knees, tears, he'd missed it all, and none of it had been his choice. "I didn't get to decide," he said quietly. "I know. I missed her whole life." "You can still be in it," Rowan said. "If you want to, that's why I came." He turned around, his jaw tight, but his eyes full of something else, something unnameable. "Where is she now?" "In the lobby," Rowan said. "She wanted to come up. I told her to wait." He nodded once, then again, slower. "Bring her in." When the elevator opened again, a small girl stepped out, holding tightly to Rowan's hand. She was wearing a yellow raincoat, even though it wasn't raining. Her dark curls framed a face so startlingly familiar it made Carter take a step back. He was looking at a memory brought to life. His own eyes stared back at him from her curious little face. She looked up at him, unsure but not afraid. Her hand clenched tighter around Rowan's fingers. "This is Ava," Rowan said softly. Carter crouched down slowly so he wouldn't tower over her. Hi Ava, he said, his voice catching more emotion than he meant to show. I'm Carter. She tilted her head. You have my eyes, she said. His throat burned. Or maybe you have mine. She smiled at that, just a little, and it cracked something wide open in him. From his office window the skyline remained unmoved, but inside something shifted. The first hinge turned, the world tilted, the clock didn't feel so urgent anymore. Ava leaned slightly into her mother's leg as Carter stood up again, slower this time. He wasn't sure what the protocol was for meeting your daughter for the first time in a skyscraper office. Nothing about this moment belonged in the world he knew, where deals were clean, decisions efficient, and emotion stored far beneath the surface. Yet here was this tiny person, grounding him to something more real than anything he'd signed his name to. Would you like to sit? He asked gently. Ava nodded, small and silent, and Rowan guided her to the leather chair across from his desk. She climbed into it with the careful focus of a child trying not to seem too small. Her legs didn't reach the floor. Carter sat too, this time not behind his desk but beside her. He glanced at Rowan, who stood nearby, arms crossed loosely like a woman prepared to step in if anything fractured. So Ava, he said, trying not to let the nerves twist his words, what do you like to do? She blinked at him then shrugged. Draw. What do you draw? People, trees, houses, sometimes clouds, but not the boring kind, the ones that look like dragons. That sounds pretty cool. She gave him a look of quiet appraisal, as if deciding whether he passed some invisible test. Do you know how to draw? She asked. Not really, he admitted. That's okay, grown-ups are usually bad at it. Rowan stifled a laugh. Carter smiled, though it trembled a bit around the edges. They stayed like that for a while, talking about Ava's favorite teacher, her love of jelly beans but only the red kind, and her suspicion that the neighbor's cat was secretly stealing her sidewalk chalk. Carter listened, not just with politeness but with hunger. Every word she said filled in a blank space he hadn't known existed. And Rowan watched him, the way he leaned in, how his eyes flickered with each of Ava's expressions like he was trying to memorize them all. After a while, Rowan knelt beside her daughter. We should go soon, sweetheart. Ava frowned. Can he come with us? Rowan hesitated. Carter stepped in. Where are you headed? Back home, Rowan said. We're staying at my sister for a few days, out in Evanston. I could drive you, Carter offered before thinking twice, if that's all right. Rowan searched his face for something, ulterior motives maybe or some residual bitterness, but all she saw was sincerity. Tired, shaken, unsure, but sincere. Okay, she said, if Ava's okay with it. Ava nodded, only if we get ice cream. He stood, reaching for his coat. I know a place. They rode the elevator down together and Carter walked behind them, studying the way Ava's hand fit so naturally in Rowan, like an extension of her. Outside, the wind had picked up and the sky had dimmed to a pale, bruised gray, but Ava's yellow coat made her a bright point of color in the gloom. A small sun tethered between them. The drive was quiet at first. Carter didn't play music. He let Ava fill the silence with half-sung phrases from her favorite songs and a dramatic retelling of a playground incident involving a boy named Kyle and an ill-fated juice box. Rowan laughed, not the brittle laugh she used when uncomfortable, but the soft one that curled in her throat like something remembered. The ice cream shop was a tiny place tucked between a bookstore and a florist, the kind of spot Carter had never once noticed. It was Ava's idea to sit outside, and though the wind nipped at their sleeves, she insisted her rocky road tasted better in the cold. Rowan sipped her coffee while Carter watched Ava lick a spoon too big for her mouth. She was at ease here in this pocket of normal, and Carter felt it, that tug in his gut that told him he didn't want this to be a one-time thing. Rowan must have felt it too. She caught him looking and said quietly, I don't expect anything. Carter shook his head. You brought her here, you told me the truth, you gave me a door, I'm not walking away from it. Rowan swallowed hard. I was scared that if I told you you'd take her, that you'd want to control everything. I get why you thought that, he said. I used to be that guy. She turned her eyes to him. Used to be. He nodded. I don't know, something's changing, maybe everything. The streetlight flickered on above them, casting a glow on Ava's curls. She swung her legs beneath the table and hummed to herself, unaware of the crossroads being drawn around her. By the time they reached Rowan's sister's place, Ava was asleep in the backseat, her head tilted toward the window. Carter pulled up in front of a narrow two-story house with a crooked porch light. Rowan turned to him. "Do you want to carry her in?" His hands froze on the steering wheel. "Can I?" She nodded. Carter got out, opened the back door, and gently scooped her up. She was warm, heavier than he expected, and her head fell easily onto his shoulder like she belonged there. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and laundry. A pair of children's shoes sat by the door, and someone's dog barked from upstairs. Rowan led him to the guest room where a small bed waited beneath a unicorn bedspread. He laid Ava down and stood back. She stirred slightly, murmured something about jelly beans, and went still again. Carter lingered at the door. "Does she know anything about me, what I do, who I am?" "Just your name," Rowan said, "and that you live in a big city and wear suits." He chuckled softly. "That's probably enough for now." Rowan looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Would you want to see her again?" "Every chance I get," he said. And for the first time since she'd walked into his office that morning, Rowan smiled in a way that wasn't weighed down by guilt. He left with her number stored in his phone and a feeling in his chest that he hadn't carried in years. Something uncertain but alive. As he stepped out onto the porch, the night felt different, less like an ending, more like something just beginning to unfold. The following morning, Carter woke before his alarm. It was the first time in years he didn't need his watch to pull him out of bed. The apartment around him, all brushed steel and minimalist lines, felt colder than usual. He moved through the space like someone trying to find their place in a room they no longer fit inside. He made coffee without checking emails. He didn't glance at the stock tickers crawling across the bottom of his TV screen. Instead, he stood barefoot in his kitchen, staring at a framed photo of his father, stern, successful, always somewhere else. He wondered what Ava would remember of him one day, what she would say about the first man she'd ever see as a father, what she already thought just from a single afternoon. The phone buzzed against the marble counter. "Rowan Langley. We're going to the park this afternoon, if you're free." That was all it said, but Carter read it twice, his thumb hovering over the screen before typing back a simple reply. "I'll be there, tell Ava to wear the yellow coat." It took him nearly 20 minutes to figure out what people wore to parks when they weren't jogging or supervising nannies. He swapped out his usual blazer for a navy pullover and changed his shoes twice before finally heading out. When he arrived, the park was quiet except for the distant sound of kids shouting near the jungle gym. Rowan stood by a bench beneath a line of bare trees, a thermos in her hands. Ava crouched at her feet, poking a stick into the dirt with serious intent. Ava looked up first. Her face lit up, not with the surprise of a one-time meeting, but the recognition of someone she already believed would come back. "You came," she said, running to him with the kind of trust that made something in his chest twist. "I said I would." She grabbed his hand without asking and dragged him toward a swing set. "Push me." He did. She squealed with each lift, demanding higher, higher, until he laughed aloud, the sound foreign in his own throat. From the bench, Rowan watched them. There was a softness in her posture now, less guarded, less like a woman bracing for consequences. When Ava finally tired of swinging, she plopped herself in the grass and began arranging acorns in neat little circles. Carter joined Rowan on the bench. "She doesn't warm up to people that fast," she said. "She doesn't feel like a stranger," he admitted. "That's the strange part." Rowan sipped from the thermos. "She sees things clearly, sometimes too clearly." Carter watched Ava sort acorns with a furrowed brow of concentration. "She's incredible." Rowan didn't respond right away. Then she said quietly, "I was terrified you'd hate me." He turned to her. I don't mean now, I mean back then, when I left. You were already halfway to a different life, promotions, investors, all those late nights. I convinced myself I'd only be a burden." "You were." "I didn't believe that back then." He let the silence stretch before answering. It wasn't just about ambition, you know. I was scared too, of needing someone, of letting them matter. She looked at him, and now, I met my daughter yesterday. Everything before that feels like it happened to someone else. They didn't speak for a while after that. Just sat there as Ava continued her silent architecture of twigs and leaves. The air smelled faintly of cold earth and far-off barbecue. Eventually, Rowan said, "My lease ends next month. We were going to move back to Portland. It was the plan before all this." Carter turned to her slowly. "Are you still going?" She hesitated. "I don't know, it doesn't feel like the right decision anymore, but I haven't figured out what the right one is." He didn't push, but she saw the flicker of something in his eyes, a quiet hope trying not to become a plea. They spent the next hour with Ava, who insisted on showing Carter the best climbing tree and then tested his bravery by making him follow her halfway up. He did, badly. She called him a business guy who's okay at trees, which she apparently meant as a compliment. By the time the wind picked up and Rowan declared it time to head home, Ava was holding his hand again, chattering about maybe drawing a comic strip with characters based on acorns. Carter knelt to her level. "Can I see you again soon?" She shrugged like it was obvious. "You're in the comic now, you kinda have to." He grinned. "Guess I'm in." Rowan smiled too, but with something more complicated behind it, as if she were still learning how to trust this version of him. The one who'd shown up, climbed trees, and listened to her daughter like every word was gold. As Carter watched them walk away, Ava skipping beside her mother, he realized he didn't want to go back to the man he was before the elevator doors opened yesterday. And he wouldn't. Later that week, Carter canceled a weekend retreat with investors in Aspen. He told his assistant to reschedule the call with Tokyo. Then he texted Rowan. "Are you free Saturday? I was thinking. Brunch, then the aquarium." The reply came 5 minutes later. "We love jellyfish. Pick us up at 10. He read it twice, a grin pulling at his face. It wasn't just the date, it was the word us. For the first time in years, Carter Hale wasn't managing time. He was living inside it, and he was just beginning to understand what he'd been missing. The aquarium lobby was already buzzing when Carter arrived. Families shuffled in and out of the glass doors in clusters, strollers jostling, kids tugging on sleeves. He stood just outside the entrance in a navy sweater and jeans, holding a small paper bag from a nearby bakery, 2 croissants and a kid-sized chocolate muffin with rainbow sprinkles. He spotted them before they saw him. Rowan's hair was down today, loose around her face, and Ava wore a pale blue dress under her puffy jacket, her curls escaping in every direction. She was skipping slightly, as if she didn't know how to just walk when the day ahead felt too full. Ava saw him first. She broke into a full run. "You're late," she announced with a grin. "I'm early, actually." She looked confused for a second. "That's a thing." He handed her the muffin. "It is when there's muffins involved." Rowan smiled as she caught up. "Morning, thanks for the sugar bomb. That'll last us all day." "I thought I'd ease into the role of co-conspirator." Rowan gave him a look, fond but cautious. "Just remember who puts her to bed when she crashes at 6 and wakes up wired at midnight." He nodded solemnly. "Noted." Inside the aquarium, the world quieted. Light filtered in through the water tunnels overhead, shimmering patterns dancing across the floors. Ava pressed her face to every glass panel, narrating what each fish reminded her of: spaghetti, her Aunt Clara's earrings, a balloon she once lost at a zoo. Carter stayed close, never crowding her but always within arm's reach. They stopped at the jellyfish tank. Ava stood frozen, watching the slow, ghost-like movement of their tendrils. "They don't even have brains," she whispered. Carter leaned in. "Really?" "Yup, but they still move like they're dreaming." He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I know a lot of people like that." Rowan, standing just behind them, glanced over. "She gets that from you, that weird poetic thing." He smiled. "I thought she got your quiet." "She's not quiet, she's listening. That's different." They moved through the rest of the building at Ava's pace, which meant lingering over the otters, skipping the educational theater, and circling back twice to the Stingray pool. Carter offered to buy lunch, but Rowan packed sandwiches. He didn't know whether to be charmed or embarrassed that she'd thought that far ahead. They ate outside near the lake, bundled on a bench with Ava perched between them, biting into her sandwich like she was preparing for hibernation. When she wandered off to collect pebbles near the shoreline, Carter turned to Rowan. "I've been thinking," he said. "Dangerous." He gave her a look. "I'd like to spend more time with her, regular time, not just weekends or random days that fit between meetings. I want to be part of the picture, not the guy who shows up when it's convenient." Rowan's brow furrowed, not with anger but caution. "What are you asking?" "I don't mean legal papers or custody battles. Not right now. I mean dinners, school pickups, dentist appointments, the boring stuff, the real stuff, if you're open to that." She didn't answer at first. She watched Ava crouched by the water, carefully lining up stones into a crooked heart shape. "I haven't shared her with anyone," she said. "Not really, I didn't even date, it always felt safer that way. I'm not trying to take anything from you." She turned to him then, her voice quiet. "You already have." He winced slightly. "I deserve that." "No, I meant you took space, in my head, even after I left. Even when I convinced myself you wouldn't have wanted this, you still stayed." Carter nodded, looking away toward the water. "I didn't have the words then. I was too focused on winning everything that didn't matter, but I'm here now, and I'll stay." Ava ran back, breathless and flushed from the wind. "I made you something." She held up a small cluster of pebbles, arranged into a lopsided triangle on her open palm. "It's a mountain," she said, "because you're brave." Carter looked at Rowan, then knelt to Ava's level, gently cupping her hands with his. "That's the best mountain I've ever seen." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of sun slanting through tree branches and Ava's voice echoing between buildings. By the time they returned to the car, she was asleep in the backseat again, head against the window, mouth open just slightly in the way kids forget they're trying to stay awake. Carter parked outside their apartment building. Rowan glanced at him, unsure. "I can carry her again," he offered. But Rowan shook her head. "She's heavy, you'll throw your back out." She stepped out and opened the back door, carefully lifting Ava into her arms. "Can I come up?" Carter asked, "just for a minute." Rowan looked at him. "Yeah, okay." Their apartment was modest, lived in. Shelves lined with Ava's picture books and hand-drawn masterpieces, a mismatched couch, the smell of something herbal and warm. Rowan carried Ava to her room, tucking her in with the ease of someone who knew every squeak of the mattress. When she returned, Carter was standing in the middle of the living room, hands in his pockets. "I didn't expect you to let me in," he said. "I didn't expect you to ask." They stood there for a long moment, not close, not far. Just somewhere in the middle, the air between them charged with old history and something tentative new. "I should go," Carter said. Rowan nodded, "Okay." He stepped toward the door, then turned back. "I meant what I said. I'm here for the long haul, whatever that means, whatever it looks like." She looked at him, and this time her voice didn't catch. "Okay." He left without a kiss, without even touching her hand. But there was something more intimate in the way they parted than any affection would have held. An understanding, quiet and deep. Rowan closed the door, leaned against it, and exhaled like she'd been holding something for 6 years. In her daughter's bedroom, Ava stirred briefly in her sleep. Downstairs, Carter stepped into the night with a feeling he couldn't name but trusted anyway. A steady kind of ache. The beginning of something he'd never planned for but now couldn't imagine walking away from. Spring arrived not all at once but in slow, thoughtful gestures. The city peeled back its gray coat and soft warmth settled into the cracks of sidewalks and hearts. Trees bloomed along Ava's street like cautious hope, and Carter Hale, who once measured time by quarterly earnings and flight schedules, now marked it by which shoes his daughter wore, boots on rainy days, sneakers for the park, ballet flats when she wanted to feel fancy. It had been nearly 2 months since the day Rowan showed up in his office. 60 days, to be exact. He knew because he kept count not out of obsession but reverence. Every day mattered now. Every hour carved out between meetings, every excuse to swing by their place with forgotten gloves or a new book she might like. He wasn't trying to prove something. He was building something piece by careful piece. Today was Ava's school art show. She'd reminded him every day that week, slipping drawings into his briefcase, quizzing him on the name of her teacher, Miss Farrell, the one with the loud earrings, and demanding confirmation every morning that he would be there. He had shifted a board meeting and flown in a partner early just to make it. And now, standing in the stuffy elementary school gym with paper lanterns strung between basketball hoops and construction paper portraits lining the walls, Carter felt more out of place than he had in any boardroom, but he also felt strangely at home. Rowan was already there, wearing a pale green dress that fluttered slightly when she turned to wave him over. She looked lighter these days, like someone slowly putting down a weight she'd carried too long. There was still caution in her, but it no longer walked beside every step. It only showed up in quiet moments when she thought no one was looking. Ava ran to him, her backpack bouncing behind her. "Come see mine." She grabbed his hand and tugged him across the room toward a collage labeled, "What Makes Me Me." The paper was covered in bold crayon colors. A sky painted the wrong shade of orange, stick figures holding hands, one tall, one with curls, one with a briefcase. "That's you," she said, pointing at the tall one. "I gave you the briefcase because you always have one." He swallowed the lump in his throat. "I love it." "I didn't make one for the cat," she added, "because he's not real, but I still talk to him sometimes." Rowan laughed softly behind them. Carter turned to her, still holding Ava's drawing. "She's incredible. She really is." Later, they found themselves sitting on folding chairs at the back of the gym, while Ava joined a group of kids trying to balance cookies on their noses. Carter leaned slightly toward Rowan. "She's resilient, strong, funny, that's you." Rowan shook her head. "She's her own thing, we just got lucky." He hesitated, then said, "I think you made luck. Every hard day, every night alone, every decision. You did it." She looked at him, her expression full of that soft, quiet bravery she always carried. "I wasn't alone," she said. "Not really. You were still there even if you didn't know it." He didn't respond with words, just looked at her in a way that said he understood. After the show, they walked back to the car together. Ava carried a purple ribbon in her hand like a trophy. "Miss Farrell said I had good composition," she declared. "You do," Carter said. "That sky was better than the real one." "I know," she said. "Can we get tacos?" Rowan smirked. "It's 8 at night." Ava shrugged. "Tacos don't care about time." Carter glanced at Rowan. "Should we say no to that logic?" She shook her head. "It's flawless." They got tacos from a truck with flickering lights and ate on the hood of Carter's car under a sky that had, in fact, turned nearly the same color as Ava's drawing. Orange with a hint of violet. The city behind them glowed quietly. There was no rush, no reason to be anywhere else. Afterward, Carter drove them home. Ava fell asleep in the backseat again, just like she always did. This time, Rowan let Carter carry her inside without a word. He did it gently, like she was made of something breakable. He lingered for a moment after tucking her in, brushing a curl from her forehead. "She calls you ours when she talks about you," Rowan said from the doorway. "Not mine, ours." He turned to her, the quiet in the room deepening. "I'm hers," he said, "and yours if you ever want that again." Rowan didn't move for a long moment. Then she stepped forward slowly, until she was standing close enough that he could feel the soft warmth of her skin. "I never stopped wanting it," she said. "I just forgot how to believe in it." He reached for her hand. "Then we'll relearn it, one day at a time." She didn't answer with words, just leaned in and pressed her forehead to his, like a vow sealed in silence. They stood like that in the doorway of a room where their daughter dreamed of dragons and tacos, and skies the color of fire. Outside, spring unfolded slowly, like love that took its time. And in that quiet, ordinary space, they began again, not as strangers, not even as who they used to be, but as a family finally coming home.